We have an exciting panel on innovation from the trenches, and I'm going to introduce Judy Bergeron, who is on my external technology advisory board, and Judy is going to moderate this panel, and we expect you guys to engage, participate, and shake things up. Feel free to be controversial. Here you go, Judy.
Okay. Good evening. Can you hear me okay? No? Yes. Now it's working? Okay. All right, let me start off by introducing our panel this evening. We've got Anna Dietrich. Anna is the Chief Operating Officer and co-founder of Terrafugia. We have Paula Long. Paula is co-founder of Equalogics and currently serving as Vice President of Engineering and Storage Group for Dell. And we have Carol Vallone, Board Chair and CEO of Wimba Corporation. So I guess what I'd like to do is start off by having each of you briefly describe your role in your startup organizations. I believe that several of you had co-founders as well. So could we start off with you?
Sure. Hi, I'm Anna Dietrich, and the company that I started about 3 years ago now, it gets fuzzy, 3 to 5 years ago, is Terrafugia, and we are building what the media loves to call a flying car. More correctly, it's a roadable aircraft. And I'm happy to talk about that later. I don't think that's what we're really supposed to be talking about tonight. So we'll talk about the details of the flying car later. But I founded the company with some folks that I knew from grad school at MIT, which is where I have my bachelor's and my master's, one of which ended up being my husband somewhere along the line. That's an interesting story, too, that we can talk about later. And now there's about 10 of us in the company. We're located in Woburn, and we're about 2 years from our first ship.
I was going to say I failed microphone. That's my next startup. My name is Paula Long. I was one of the 3 co-founders of a storage startup called Equalogic. We were bought by Dell about 18 months ago. Before that, I had done a stint in 2 different startups. Neither one was I a founder at, so I decided to go in, try it a couple of times, and then actually try to run the ship. The first one was a base hit. It was a company called Bright Tiger that got bought by Alaire, that got bought by Macromedia, that got bought by Adobe, and we'll see who buys Adobe. The second one was trying to do web infrastructure at a time when the web was tanking. So we got our angel money in 2000, and we were trying to raise money for a web infrastructure company in 2001. Really bad idea. Really bad idea. But the good thing that happened is the 3 founders, myself, Paul Koning, and Peter Hayden, all became unemployed at the same time. We had nothing to lose, so we started Equalogic, which was pretty successful.
I'm Carol Vallone. I'm currently the board chair and CEO of a company called Wimba Corporation, and we do collaborative solutions for higher education primarily. Before that, I had started a company called WebCT, and it was the company that defined e-learning for education and basically transformed the way that faculty teach and students learn by having an internet application for online learning. And took that from 0 up to 50 and sold it 3 years ago and retired. And then because of my type A personality, I just jumped back into something. And then before that, I was the president of a corporate training company. And before that, I was with a string of technology companies, and primarily in the parts of the company where there was innovation and new products being spawned, being rolled out to the marketplace. So from pretty much out of school, I've been in the tech field, launching new products, defining new markets, building new technology areas. From the business, marketing, and sales side would be more of my expertise than the dev side, which it sounds like we have more development expertise sitting next to me.
Carol. Paula, we talked about this a little bit at dinner. What did it mean to you personally to take the leap into entrepreneurship?
Well, at the time I decided that I wanted to run my own company, it was partial ego, partial frustration, because you wanted to set your own culture, you wanted to set the pace. I think Michael did a really good job of talking about, things just were going too slow, where you could spend a year convincing something was the right thing to do, and by the time you convinced them, it was no longer the right thing to do, right? So what you wanted was sort of a fast-paced environment where, you had nothing to lose if you got it wrong, except other people's money, right? And you had and you had everything to gain if you got it right. So the one thing I did do, though, is I signed up my family. So there was a bunch of founders in Equalogic, just not me, Pete, and Paul, I told my husband and my son, they were co-founders, so they got a share of the stock. They'll probably be leaving me. But at any rate, I'm only joking. And then I think the other members of the family were also co-founders. So I think anybody who wants to go do anything in the innovative, anything where you're going to put your whole heart into something and you're going to get your life, you got to sign up the whole crew.
Carol, would you like to talk about your motivations behind leaping into it?
Yes, so I was running a corporate training company with a partner. We were a small, privately owned company. We had built out training and services for Fortune 500 companies around information management. And my partner's mental space was he didn't want to have any external capital to build the business. And I was much more impatient than that and wanted to really fuel the company and start up something different. So my criteria before I started WebCT was that I was looking for something that I could have a global impact in the education field. I wanted to do something that was closer to home. I was tired of commuting from the North Shore down to Waltham, and I knew I wanted it to be in the tech field. And so I started thinking about, in the corporate world that I was coming out of, everybody had automated all the back office systems, and then the front worker productivity tools came about. So I thought, if you look at all the college campuses today, everybody has a network infrastructure, everybody has the big financial aid and registration systems, but this goes back to the late 90s. It's hard to go back into that zone. Nobody had any applications that were impacting the way faculty and students were interacting. So I thought this could be interesting to think about how we can use the internet and this network infrastructure, so there was no barrier to entry, to define a new application. So came up with this concept of an internet learning system, and then I went around to a number of the known institutions in the Boston area to see if I could get anybody that had a reputation to back my idea, to be a champion, because I wanted to go out and raise venture money and needed someone to endorse the idea. And uniformly, everybody told me faculty will never do this. So I thought, all right, kill that thought. I got to try something else now. So ended up actually developing out a prototype model that I got some angel backers, developed a prototype model. We tested it at Northeastern University. It crashed and burned continually. The psych department at Northeastern was using it as a psychology experiment to look at how do students relate to technology in the classroom, kind of thing. And so the students related very well. The faculty was very patient with this constant crashing and burning kind of thing. And so we moved on then to develop it into a real environment. And the story proceeds, which we might get to this later, but the story proceeded with CMGI. Does everybody remember CMGI? Our biggest investor, came in early as a venture investor. So our business model was that we were going to inexpensively license this technology that would connect faculty and students. We were going to build out communities of interest around specific disciplines. Sounds kind of Facebook-y, back before Facebook. And we would then monetize through an e-commerce model. And so we set off. We had 2 million students using pretty quickly, a few hundred schools using pretty quickly, and we had a very credible investment bank tell us that we were worth $2 billion. So they said we should go public right away. And, we were unprofitable. We had under $2 million in revenue. So didn't think that was a good idea. Even in my naivete, I didn't think that was a good idea back then. So the long and the short of the story is, so we have this dot-com model, and everybody knows the dot-com market crashed early 2000s. And then when you were talking about innovation earlier, I was thinking about the fact that where we were innovative was we kept watching the market. We said, okay, we can't. Higher ed isn't interested in an ad model. I still want to build out this model because I'm personally committed to this. The financial market isn't buying into this .com model. So what can we do here? So took it to the next level. We were fortunate because as we were building out a customer base, the customers were asking for more and more functionality. So we were able to transition our company into an enterprise software application. We were able to go from a $1,900 a year license fee up to over $100,000 a year license fee. And that was all around just innovating, reacting to our customers, to our market, and changing our business model around a concept that we are very passionate about. So for me, the reason I got into it was I saw an opportunity to really transform education and felt I was passionate about what I was doing, which then transformed to a real partnership with many, many customers in the marketplace to help us build that.
Carol. Anna, do you want to jump in on this?
Sure. So the biggest reason that I guess I got involved in Terrafugia, all of us that founded the company, there were 5 of us. We were in grad school at MIT at the time. 3 of us were in the Aero program. 2 of us were in the Sloan School of Business. I'm an engineer. All of the things that I learned about business, I've learned the hard way, which I think is the best way, just as a personal note. We got into it for a couple of reasons. The first was that there was a regulatory change, so it was sort of this sort of perfect storm that I guess you do learn about in business school, of something major shifts in the bigger societal ecosystem that you're trying to work within. So the FAA put forth a set of new regulations in 2004 that made it easier to both certify an aircraft for sale and to become a pilot to fly these aircraft. We looked at that and said, aha, an opportunity. We don't like, none of us were really interested in going back to work at big aerospace. I've had some good experiences at places like Boeing and GE, but being one piece of that much bigger corporate community wasn't something that I was excited about, as having both the personal opportunity and the personal responsibility of doing something entrepreneurial. So we took this regulation shift and said, okay, this is our into the aviation world. And now we had to figure out what we wanted to do with that and where we wanted to go. All of us that started the company are pilots, and that meant that we knew firsthand all of the things that are wrong with general aviation. We love flying. That's a passion you just can't squash out of someone who has their pilot's license. But we knew how much of a pain in the butt it could be, to be frank. And we thought that we could do something to address that. And the way that we have chosen to address that is by combining the functionality of being able to drive on any surface road with your basic single-engine aircraft platform. So we saw this regulatory shift as a reason why it made sense for us to try this whole quote-unquote flying car idea one more time. There's nothing new under the sun. There's been flying cars around since 1918, but we had some things that were significantly different enough that we saw a way to try it again and hopefully be successful at it this time. And so far, so good. We have managed to raise the money that we've needed, which is always a good first step. And our first flight of our proof of concept vehicle, which was our first prototype, happened this past March. So we're now working on our second prototype. And I do agree completely that prototypes are the best possible way of learning things. It's just a little bit more difficult when they take 18 months to build and cost $1 million. So when you're actually talking about hardware, it's a little bit of a different model, but I still loved the things that we were hearing about how to apply that.
Thank you, Anna. You somewhat segued into my next question, which was to discuss some of the challenges that you faced.
Well, I can keep going then.
Okay, let's go for it.
So I think one of the challenges that we're probably all familiar with, anyone that's tried to do something entrepreneurial or even innovative in a larger corporate setting, is getting someone to believe in you enough to give you money to do it. And that's certainly been a challenge that we've faced, and that's something that I think you continue to face as you try to grow a company out of that initial seed stage as well. So that's clearly a challenge. The other challenge, there's a whole host of engineering challenges, which even though we're at an engineering school probably isn't why you're here. So from a company perspective, I think the biggest challenge that we've had is building credibility and convincing this world of really sort of an old boys club of aviation that this group of young people, we were all under the age of 35 when we started the company. A lot of us still are. And hadn't done anything like this before. So our first challenge was convincing this aviation community, who's very traditional and very sort of set in their ways, understandably, because you're going to be trusting your life to whatever contraption it is that you get into. So you want to make sure that it's built by people who know what the heck they're doing. So building that credibility, both from a business perspective and from a technical perspective, would have been difficult had we only been trying to build an airplane. Now we're also trying to build a flying car. And there's a whole host of history that goes with that. One of the things that we're very adamant about, that you'll see in all of our marketing materials and that you'll hear me say till you're sick of it if you talk to me long enough, is that the Transition, which is the name of our aircraft, is not a flying car, it's a roadable aircraft. And that sounds sort of trivial at the start, but you think about it long enough, and that was a big piece of us shifting that credibility into our favor. And of course, flying the first one was a huge leap for us credibility-wise.
Can I just ask you a question?
Absolutely.
There's something that you're saying, yeah, it takes 18 months to do it, and I happen to know for reasons I won't bore you with. a bit about aviation. I would think that being able to prototype a simulator would be both a great marketing tool and a risk management tool.
Oh, absolutely.
And that doesn't take 18 months to do, and also gives you insight into some of the control factors.
Oh, absolutely. There's all sorts of things that you can do that are short of a full vehicle. It's just there's things that you learn from a full vehicle that you can't learn from wind tunnel models, remote control models, and simulators, and SolidWorks, and CATIA, and Fluent, and yada yada yada.
But
So.
I'm trying to get a venture capitalist who knows how to fly, and I put him in front of
Oh, sure. Yeah.
he's going to write a check.
You know that does work actually. Yeah. So yeah, the credibility thing was a huge challenge that I believe we've really started to meet in a significant way at this point. And then there's of course the engineering challenges to go along with it. But
And I'd like to ask the audience to jump in with any questions at any point. Okay, so Paul.
Yes, here we go. Okay. Who's first?
Brian?
Yeah, can you each speak a bit to the impact of the Great Recession on what you're thinking about startup entrepreneurship?
The question is the impact that the recession has had on their businesses.
Okay. Well, where I sit today, I'll talk about the company I'm with right now, which is Wimba Corporation, and we have collaborative software for higher education. And there's, when we think about the business of education and the issues that the executives are concerned about at the institution, we can help the institution generate incremental revenues by allowing students that can't physically come to class to be able to be in a classroom live online. We allow them to be able to reduce their cost structures, whether it be putting up another building or not, or whether it be having people eliminate the cost of travel. We also can document improvements in retention and outcomes. So right now, there's a glut of people on the marketplace that are trying to go back to school. Schools can't keep up with the capabilities. People also can't afford school. So we're in a kind of an interesting position because we can, if you just want to go at pure recession topics, we've got a huge amount of people that are back in school right now. We've got a huge skilled worker gap coming up in this country. We've got the ability for our customers to generate incremental revenues, decrease costs, and improve outcomes. We're sort of in a choice position with our business, but we've also been very careful to talk about why we can help during this phase right now, which goes back to some of the points about innovation. You know, at some points, it's about technology and learning and productivity for students and faculty. At other points, it's about the business of education. So I think it's a question of understanding where the different tiers are in the organization and tailoring to that. That felt like I could do a sales pitch right here. That was awesome.
So I look at it sort of differently. This is like the perfect time to do a startup. This is like we did it in 2001, which was not necessarily a great economic time either, but you can find, if you've got great ideas that'll cause customers to be able to do things they couldn't do before in ways that generate revenue, in ways that make them more productive, in ways that improve somebody's life, you'll get someone to back you. And you can find cheap space, great people. You can find there's a lot of, this sounds terrible, there's a lot of people who are rooting for you. There's a lot of people out there right now looking at A-round startups wanting to see, people creating jobs. And so a lot about, when we sold, we had over 300 people. So if you think about it, there was 3 of us, so we do the math, we created 297, jobs. And so it is a perfect time in these economic times. It's actually harder when it's booming to start a company because cost of labor is more expensive, cost of space is more expensive, cost of equipment is more expensive, and expectations are higher. Right now, a VC before wanted to flip a company in 3 to 5 years, right? And I hate the word flip, but that's how they think. Right, sorry guys, but not always. Their job is, as a VC, your job is to make money for your limited, and if you forget that, you're not a good VC. The same token, you still want to get your companies doing well. So every VC here can hate me now, but that's your job, is to make money for your limiteds, right? But now the horizon is 7 to 10 years, right? It's a longer horizon, so you can actually do more interesting things, and you're not worried about somebody selling you out early. Now, you also have to pick good venture guys. We did, and they stuck with us. But we went from, I think we did like 137 million the year we got sold, which isn't bad. Right, but we went from 0 to 137, and we were sold in 2008. So it's a perfect time to do a startup, and I'd encourage anybody with an idea, easy, execution hard, right, to go out and do it, and I'll do it again.
If I can be controversial on that point, I think all the points about labor available, talent, ideas are absolutely dead on. But now I see A rounds happening. Last year, nobody was doing anything. So I mean, if you're getting venture money, not like you could before. My opinion, not like you could before. I felt like you guys. How many deals did you do last year? New deals, A rounds. Yeah, compared to.
10, 12. So yeah, it was down.
It was down. It just felt like there was a lot of people around, but it didn't feel like there was a lot of capital. But most venture people seemed like they were doing follow-on investing as opposed to new investing. And I felt like the way the economy was going to recover is with new investment and putting money behind people. But I didn't see a lot of that happening. I saw a ton of follow-on deals happening last year. It seems like it's opening up right now. That's just sort of the way it felt to me in the past 12 to 18 months.
This is a follow-up to your conversation. What do you think the environment is for attracting customers? Because, the environment, labor costs are down.
Right.
An idea. How about attracting your first new customers? What are your lessons learned down the economy?
So the question is, what do you think about the chances of attracting customers in this down economy? Is that correct?
What's the experience?
What's the experience compared to in the past?
For us, we've had an extraordinary year in terms of bringing new customers on board. Obviously we haven't started shipping product yet, but we have an order backlog. You have to place a deposit to be on that list. And I think for us, the boost in credibility and the accomplishment of that first flight and the publicity that generated has trumped any economic situation out there. The light sport rule is also an interesting situation because light sport aircraft, by definition, are smaller and lighter weight than the traditional aircraft that would be available. So here we're offering an aircraft that has a lower cost of maintenance, literally by regulation, that has a functionality that completely differentiates it from the other 100 of these aircraft that are available for purchase today. So I think the economy is actually conspiring in our favor right now, both from people downsizing into this category where there's sort of a glut of product and we're the only ones differentiated in this fashion, as well as the fact that, we're asking you for a sizable deposit to hold your place in production, but you don't owe us any more money until we get closer to production, and that's still 2 years away. And everybody's still enough of a hopeless optimist to think that 2 years from now things will be great. So I think at least right now, we're actually benefiting from that situation.
So for us, we are now part of Dell. So Dell's got a great channel, has great sales. But as Equalogic, data storage is someplace where there's a couple of these small guys called EMC, NetApp, HP. So there's pretty big guys. So to get anybody to take a risk on an emerging company is, they're putting their job on the line. And so what you have to do is you can't just have an innovative product. You have to have an innovative business model. So you have to have a way and a hook that makes it compelling besides that, my widget's better than your widget. So for us, we went to a very compelling business model and a value model for customers, which was an all-inclusive packaging. All the other storage vendors were doing a la carte for features. We packaged everything. If you signed up with us, you got everything that we ever built ever again in the software space. So guys who bought a product with us in 2003 are still getting features in 2009, right, as long as they stay under support. So we hooked them in that way. We also we enabled a different class of user. So if you knew the company called Alaire who did Cold Fusion, Cold Fusion let a bunch of people develop web applications who had no business writing programs, right? Absolutely no business writing programs, right? Because they were reporters or mathematicians or something, but they could go ahead and write programs. What we did was we created a storage system that any IT administrator could administer. So we made storage experts who probably, could never have done all the complicated things that required to set up storage, but we automated all of that. And then we went after the VAR channel. So we went after resellers because we didn't have any reputation, but they did. So we convinced them, and then they sold to their customers. And we gave them a big part of the profit. So that we gave really, really good margins to, or whatever you call it, what you give to a VAR. So we gave them a pretty good percentage so that they would make a lot of money. Because if they're making money, we're making money. Right. So those were the kind of things we did.
There's two things that I'm thinking about. One is we've got a pricing program that's called Step Into pricing so that to get people in, if they're saying they're not going to early on have a lot of people using, we'll allow them to come in at a lower price, but they'll step into the full annual fee. And the other thing is documenting the ROI for them early on. So both of those things in terms of early customer usage has allowed our customers to step in without a huge investment and fearing that they're not going to get enough out of it, and step into, though, for us on the other side, then pricing that's at the level that we need to run the business.
Okay, we have a question down there.
I'm John Chickering from Fidelity Investments. I'm asking myself, what of your experience can I bring back to my boss? So what is it that you've learned, seen, done right, done wrong, that can scale from your world of 0 to 300 employees to my world of 40,000 employees? You know, be it managing technology, managing mutual, managing Thornton's money. Never mind. Is it possible? I mean, is it, was your success so heavily dependent upon your space in the marketplace? Was there something that you could bring back to a big company?
We were just talking about that.
Who wants to go first? You want to go first, Hannah?
Sure.
No,
it's where to begin. We're fighting over who gets to start.
Dump your air fleet right now.
So yes. The first thing is everyone should invest in the roadable aircraft. No. I think for us, there's only 10 of us, so like you said, different universes, but I don't think you can ever underestimate the value of personal accountability and having a schedule with defined goals. And I think that's true no matter what scale you're talking about. We've done what a lot of folks in the aviation industry would have told you was impossible before we started out. And that not only that we built a roadable aircraft that works and all of that, but that we did it in a year. We went from zero tooling to functional prototype in 1 year, which in aviation is insane. And it's also the year that we said that we were going to do it in 2 years prior. So having a schedule and having the discipline to stick to it, I think has been really instrumental for us, and I think that's infinitely scalable.
So I'm going to probably 3 things. First is don't overthink everything. So having a schedule is important, but going, just because you got in the car and you're driving south, right, doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to the right place. So you really want to continue to rethink about what you're doing. And you need to make a date, because if you're a startup, you're going to run out of money. But the fact that you get someplace that's not where you want to be isn't success, right? So don't overplan, don't overthink. So even before all this rapid project stuff was going on, we kind of knew we were going to Florida. We kind of knew we had this much money. And we kind of knew what problem we were trying to solve. But we didn't know really from month to month what we were going to get done that month, right? And some things we redid because they were crap. So in big companies, what you can do is you can get into nobody wants to be at fault. No one wants to admit they made a mistake. So you just keep heading. And the fact that you veered off and you're going to Ohio, not Florida, you're still sort of heading away from the north, right? But it might not be where you want to go. So you have to be willing to admit you made a mistake. Or, I hate to say not made a mistake, you weren't right this time, right? And so that's a big one. And in a big company, it's probably even more important. The next one is don't get caught up in the ego of who's right or what you're doing. Think about what your customer wants and figure out what you can do minimally to satisfy them. What is the least you have to do in your first product? What's the least you have to do in the follow-on product? And so then don't try to over-feature things. We call it polishing the rock. Because no one will really care. Once the rock is shiny, nobody cares if it shines more. And so when I was at Digital, I was like, we're buffing this rock, right? I mean, it's a pretty nice looking rock, and we're just buffing it, right? So you want to make sure that you don't spend a lot of time adding stuff that, at the end of the day, isn't going to be noticed by a customer or isn't going to make you any money. And the third one is your team has to be totally committed and completely honest with each other. So if you're walking around being nice to each other all the time, so there's no conflict, then everybody can't be right all the time and everybody can't be nice all the time. So if you're sitting in a design review meeting or a business planning meeting and no one says you're a liar, or they might do it more gracefully, right, you probably are not sitting in a meeting where people are willing to tell you the truth. And the last thing you want to be doing is everybody smoking, doing secondhand smoke and going to Ohio and they're heading to Florida. So you really, really need to have a culture where you don't get fired for saying that doesn't make sense or I don't understand. So I think those are the three kind of biggies for us.
I think the biggest issue in a big company is how do you be entrepreneurial like a small company? We were talking about this at dinner. I think in a big company you need an entrepreneurial team that's charged with and able to design an idea and run with it, as opposed to, because most big companies, what happens, really cool ideas get spawned, but then they drop dead of the weight of the company bureaucracy. So to me, it's defining an organization and that allows for not just innovation, but the ability to then launch with, SWAT teams or skunk works, whatever you want to call them, that can bring things to market as an innovator and entrepreneurial company would, as opposed to as a big company would. That was our discussion.
Do we have any more questions out here in the audience? Not at this point. Technology systems are an important part of every successful organization. Discuss some of the systems that work well for you.
Nobody's mentioning Microsoft.
As in company infrastructure type thing?
Yes. Carol?
Happy to. So probably the best embedded system we have at the moment is Salesforce, and because it allows us to figure out what is our sales cycle at every stage. We have criteria defined for what has to happen at that stage. We know how many stages we have. We know how many days, how many customers go from, or prospects go from stage to stage. So we build out this whole system with Salesforce to manage our pipeline, and then on top of that, we embed marketing programs to be able to move the accounts faster and more through the actual pipeline. I think just sort of that's like a particular technology structure, but I think the biggest issue is the cross-functional nature of the company and the knowledge management systems we have that allow for people to be able to understand what's happening in the other organization, so you can get everybody through a common knowledge base to move together. You were talking before about common goals. I think that's the kiss of death for small companies. Everybody sort of runs in a different direction. So the infrastructure that allows us to integrate our efforts and allow all the organizations to understand the goals. For us, it's a Salesforce system, it's a project management system, and it's wikis, knowledge management systems that allow us to share all of our information.
Well, I think we haven't quite evolved into sort of what I think of as the typical infrastructure needs yet. There's only 10 of us full-time at the company, and 2 of those guys work in the composite shop. But I would agree completely with the need for the project management software. For us, I think that Google Calendar, actually it sounds a little silly to hear myself say that, but without something like that, our progress would be greatly hindered. And that's something that all of our employees, all 10 of us granted, have full modification authority over, so people can move things around, and it's up to you to check and make sure that the meeting that you put on at 2 o'clock today is still in fact at 2 o'clock today. That kind of flexibility enabled by being able to share that same tool is very important to us. And then most of the things that are more important for us, I guess along the wiki lines as well, are actually custom generated tools that we've developed in-house, either on a database platform or on a spreadsheet platform, to help us with either task list management and progress tracking, or sort of our design record book, knowledge of the history of and evolution of the design.
Okay, so we had 2 successes and 1 failure. Well, outgrew one. So our development environment was all based on freeware. Couldn't bring ourselves to spend the hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy, pick your favorite source control manager, whatever. So, SVC ran out of that, and then it went to, SNV or SVN, I forget, SVN. Yep, and then Bugsy for Bugzilla, and we used all the freeware stuff for that, and that worked out, great, and it was 10% of a person. We set up the environment so everybody could work from home and be 100% productive. Because what you want in an emerging company, even in a large company, is you want to screw this life balance stuff. You want everybody's life, all of it, right? Or as much of it as you could drain out of them. I don't care what anybody says. It's just a fact of life, right? So I'd be answering your mail at 2 o'clock in the I'd be answering your mail at 2 o'clock in the morning, so you'd send it to me at 1:30, so I'd know you were there, right? But But at any rate, so you really do want to set up an environment where being a remote worker is as productive as being a local worker. We actually use Salesforce as well, and we tied it into some web things, Eloqua for lead nurturing, because you have two metrics. One is dollars to product, and then one's dollars to customers. And both of them are equally important. And the more you spend in dollars to product, the less you probably have left over for dollars to customers, and that's probably more important. Now, we also we were manufacturing hardware, so we had an ERP system that we let our manufacturing guy pick. Probably not a good idea. It was cheap, I'll give you that, but we outgrew it because we couldn't actually, at the end, we were switching over to Oracle. We couldn't actually, our order entry system couldn't take all the orders. It's a good problem to have. It couldn't take all the orders at the end of the quarter without crashing. So we could run into risk of missing our revenue targets because we couldn't get the orders entered. How sad is that? But it's a good problem to have, right? But I think we probably should have spent a little bit more time thinking about, a little bit ahead of success on systems, which we were just in time on systems.
Any more questions from the audience? Okay. Can you talk about your core staff and what criteria you used to build that core staff way back in the beginning? You're at the beginning, Anna.
Well, I guess I married some of my core staff. Actually, we had the very good fortune of being able to build the company to the size that it is almost exclusively from people that we'd already worked with, which from a risk mitigation perspective is fabulous because you already know what you're getting. And coming out of MIT, we knew some really great folks that we had done some crazy things with in the past. And some of them had gone really well and some of them had gone really badly. But the good news is we understood why on both counts. So we didn't have to do much external hiring to get to the size that we're at. For the little hiring that we've done, we've learned that character and personality fit is infinitely more important than resume credentials.
So let's see. We started on day one with 10 people. They were all people we had known and worked with before. So we got to, in engineering, to about 50 people before we needed to use a recruiter. So we did a lot of, working your own network. But the criteria we're looking for is people who were smart, adaptable, and quick, right? Because quick is really important. And iteration, I don't mean to suck up to Michael, I'd rather see it done twice, because it's usually done twice faster than it's done once, where somebody thought it was perfect and it wasn't perfect anyway, right? So we needed people who were not really big egos. I said that there was only one prima donna and I was here first, so it was me. But we really looked at people who were very smart, very fast, could make decisions really quickly, and who were domain experts. So we hired a domain expert for each space, and then they hired their space. And then you had to have people you could blindly trust, because if you couldn't trust your staff, then you weren't going to go anywhere because you weren't going to scale.
Yeah, my themes pretty much follow the woman that I'm doing this company with. It's the third company we're doing together, and her sort of shorthand for me is, "You're so Italian. You always have to hire family." And she didn't mean not family like, because I really don't believe in bringing family into the business, but just people I know. I totally agree with that. People that have industry expertise, that are well respected in the industry. And for me, one of the biggest things is hiring people that are much smarter than me in their function, and having everybody be comfortable with a team orientation in terms of everybody's going to be incented on the company goal, so that you keep instead of fracturing all the efforts, you keep everybody on one prize, which is the financial performance of the company, which everything else impacts, kind of thing. And so those are the criteria that I've used: people that have industry reputations, people that are smarter than I am, and people that are willing to work on a team and share common goals.
What was the biggest fight your organization's had? Good fight. Good fight. I know you're married.
The question was, what was the biggest fight that you had within the organization?
For us, traditional wisdom for a storage company is go to Wall Street, sell to big customers, be bought for a lot of money from pick your favorite vendor. And we didn't want to do that. We wanted to. So it was a sort of a circular thing. So, when are you signing up JP Morgan? Never, right? Why aren't you signing up? Because, the sales guys want to go to there too, because it's a big commission, right? So we were doing a bunch of base hits running the boards, right? But But if you got somebody with the bases loaded who can hit a home run. So there was a bunch of fights about our go-to-market. There was a bunch of fights about the senior management team as we grew. Because what happens is you're successful now. So you probably heard me say this, is that, when you're paying penny slots, everybody just lets you play, right? No one's sitting over your shoulder saying, maybe you ought to turn it this way, right? Now when you're making millions, everybody wants to have input on what you're doing, right? And so we had lots of stuff about, should we be taking the product this way? Should we take it that way? But also, who should be in the leadership of a company? Because the people who start the company may not be the people who take it public. And that gets to be some pretty, I'm not going to go into details unless there's beer, but that gets to be pretty entertaining in a startup, because it's not always the skill set or the resume or whatever. So you can have family that you're not taking with you the whole way, and that can be, the personal parts of it. You said not personal, but the personal parts of it are really probably where you can get stuck.
I think as we grew WebCT, one of the biggest issues was, and I'm coming right back at you with this one in terms of being a VC, we had a lot of venture money in our company, and one of the biggest issues I think we had was too much venture representation on our board and not enough industry expertise. And so lots of decisions were driven by financials that weren't necessarily appropriate for the long-term growth of the company. And I think that in terms of an overall company issue, that was something that people get rights to be on the board, right, as they invest. And that becomes a very tender balance as you're growing a company, what the investors' interests are in what time frame versus what might be good for the overall growth and health of the company. The other thing was market focus, that we were in the education market. There was constant themes about get into the corporate market, build out more internationally, go into K-12. So it was the what market focus was the appropriate market focus. Do you want to be a big fish in a smaller market? Do you want to be a smaller fish in a bigger market? And how do you weigh out your investments across all those markets to get the optimal ROI? So those are just sort of two things that haven't come up yet.
Well, I think we've been having the warning earthquakes for the big fight about the board composition in our own company. So I agree wholeheartedly with that problem. I think I agree completely with the things that have been said already. So I'm going to add one that's a little bit of a more technical nature, but it relates very closely to our business strategy, which is we had to decide whether or not to continue to fly our proof of concept aircraft. So we defined some goals for it. We'd build it. We went out and tested it. It worked. And in only 28 flights, in about 2 weeks of full-on flight testing, we met our goals. Now that sounds really wonderful, but it's really fun to test fly a plane that you've built. And it's this great media draw, and customers love to hear about your stories of flight testing. And we had to decide to stop flying it. So we now have the proof of concept shell with the engine pulled out, and this thing over here, and it's in pieces being reused and recycled and used as a test bed for our next prototype. And in the end, the reason that we're doing the company is to sell planes to customers in 2011, not to have fun with the proof of concept.
Right, there goes my flight.
And I think that was the hardest decision that we've had to make that crossed both the technical and the business side of things. And I think it was hands down the right decision. But that one was rough.
I guess we have one more round of questions here, and maybe we can close things up with talking about what one piece of advice would you offer to someone who wanted to start up?
For me, it's get someone that's one step ahead of you at every step of your business. So when you're launching, look for someone that's done that. When you're scaling, look for someone that's done that. When you're going out to a new customer, look for someone that's done that. I've been very big. You're looking for a round of venture, always make sure you got the next round coming. So for me, it's always been are there people that are mentors out in the world that can help build the company or the idea to the next level?
I think the thing that I like to share the most from my experience thus far with Terrafugia, and I want to be very clear that we're by no means done. I don't get to say I told you so until we've got 50,000 of these things out there. But I've had people come up to me at trade shows before we flew the plane, when we just had a mock-up, and come up to me and say, this is impossible, right? And they are dead serious, and they think that, oh, this poor delusional little girl doesn't know what she's getting into. And the only thing that I've ever been able to come up with that isn't violent or confrontational is just that, over the course of my engineering experience, I've learned to use the word impossible with the greatest caution. And my best triumph thus far doing this is that one of those people who the most adamantly wanted to argue with me about why what I was trying to do was impossible is one of our major investors. So going through that cycle of converting him from this is impossible to giving us a sizable chunk of money, I think speaks to, ask yourself the tough questions, but once you've convinced yourself that you can do this, don't let anybody else tell you otherwise.
I think I would tell people, before you start, think about why you're doing it. So if you're doing it to get rich, there's better ways to make money. Because 90% of these, maybe 99% of these things don't make any money for anybody, right? So if you're doing it for money, don't do it. If you're doing it for ego, don't do it, because every day you're going to be wrong, right? And it's sort of humbling. If you're doing it because you have a passion to create a culture that you're comfortable in, and you have a product idea you believe in, and you have customers you want to make happy, then that's the right thing. And test the people you're hiring, too, because when you're around startups and someone says, we're going to get rich, you should fire that person. Because if they're there for the money, because there's going to be hard times, and there's going to be times where you don't know you're going to make it, right? And you really don't even know you're going to make it even after you made it, right? We were, arguably one of the best startups in 2006, 2007, and we didn't feel successful at all. We were like the duck. Right, you see the swimming like crazy just to stay in place. So really, really question why you're doing it, and then after you decide to do it, don't think about it too much. Just do it, right? Because otherwise, you'll just keep second guessing yourself.
Any other questions? I guess we're good. All right, thank you, panel.